Hi, I'm Elizabeth Montgomery, with a word to mothers about two new cereals from Quaker.
And they are absolutely extraordinary people. And if they're watching, hi.
It's been 30 years since the passing of Bewitched star Elizabeth Montgomery, but now something has changed. After decades of silence, her longtime partner has finally spoken out. What he revealed has left fans stunned and raised new questions about the woman the world thought they knew. Join us as we uncover what's finally come to light after all these years. The showbiz bloodline. Elizabeth Montgomery was born on April 15, 1933, in Los Angeles, California, into a family that was already deeply connected to the entertainment industry. From the moment she entered the world, it seemed likely that she would one day step into the spotlight. Her father was Robert Montgomery, a well-known actor who had already built a solid career in film and television. He starred in many classic films during the 1930s and 1940s and later became a respected television producer and host. Her mother, Elizabeth Daniel Bryan Allen, was also a performer. She had worked on Broadway and had a strong presence on the stage. With both parents involved in acting, it's no surprise that Elizabeth developed an early interest in the arts. Elizabeth came from a rich family background, with roots in both Irish and Scottish ancestry. One of her great-grandfathers had come to America from Belfast, Ireland, which was a meaningful detail that Elizabeth later appreciated. She grew up knowing stories of her ancestors and carried that heritage with pride. But not everything in her early life was perfect. Elizabeth had an older sister who tragically passed away in infancy. This loss had a lasting effect on the family. Elizabeth was still quite young when it happened, but the memory of that loss remained with her. Fortunately, she grew up with a younger brother, Robert Jr., and the two formed a close bond that helped fill the emotional space left by their sister's absence. As a child and teenager, Elizabeth attended prestigious schools. She first went to the Westlake School for Girls in California, a private school known for its high standards and disciplined education. Later, she transferred to the Spence School in New York City, another elite institution. These schools helped shape her confidence and gave her a strong foundation. It was clear from an early age that Elizabeth was serious about her future. When it came time to choose a career path, Elizabeth didn't waver. She knew she wanted to act. To build her skills, she spent 3 years at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in Manhattan. The Academy had trained many respected actors, and Elizabeth fully committed herself to the program. She worked hard to master her craft, and those years paid off. In 1953, Elizabeth got her first big break on Broadway with the play Late Love. The production received good reviews, and so did Elizabeth's performance. It was a major moment for her. People started to take notice of her talent, and she soon began getting more offers. Her success on stage quickly led to appearances in films and television, where her star continued to rise. Elizabeth Montgomery wasn't just a child of Hollywood. She was someone who worked hard to earn her place in it. Next up, we'll look at the role that made her a household name and why it was both a blessing and a burden. The breakthrough she never escaped. After Elizabeth Montgomery's stage success in the early 1950s, it didn't take long for television to notice her. The medium was growing quickly, and Elizabeth's charm, poise, and acting skills made her a natural fit. Her earliest roles were in popular anthology series, where each episode told a different story with different characters. These shows gave her a chance to play a wide range of roles and show off her talent. She appeared on Studio One, a well-regarded drama series that featured strong scripts and big-name guest stars. She also had parts on Alfred Hitchcock Presents and The Twilight Zone, two iconic shows known for suspense, drama, and unexpected endings. In The Untouchables, she took on a more gritty role in a crime-focused storyline. These appearances helped build her reputation as a serious and versatile actress. By the end of the 1950s, Elizabeth had become a familiar face on television. In 1960, she earned her first Emmy nomination for an appearance on a TV drama. This was a big achievement, especially since she was still under 30 years old. Her talent was being recognized not just by viewers, but also by people inside the industry. At the same time, she was also making progress in film. She had a role in The Court Martial of Billy Mitchell, a military courtroom drama starring Gary Cooper. Later, in 1963, she played a lead role in Johnny Cool, alongside Henry Silva and Dean Martin. These films didn't launch her to movie stardom, but they showed that she could handle leading roles and work with major stars. Then, in 1964, everything changed with the debut of Bewitched. Elizabeth was cast as Samantha Stevens, a modern housewife who also happened to be a witch. Samantha wanted nothing more than to live a normal suburban life with her mortal husband, Darren. But her magical powers and the antics of her quirky relatives often got in the way. The show was clever, funny, and had just the right amount of fantasy to make it stand out from other sitcoms of the time. Audiences loved it. Bewitched quickly became one of the top-rated shows on television, and stayed that way for years. It aired for 8 seasons, from 1964 to 1972. Elizabeth's performance as Samantha was the heart of the show. She brought warmth, intelligence, and humor to the role, making Samantha a character people genuinely cared about. She also played Samantha's mischievous cousin, Serena, who had a completely different personality. Serena was wild, bold, and carefree. To add to the fun, Elizabeth used the fake name Pandora Spock in the credits whenever she played Serena. Viewers were impressed by how easily she switched between the two characters. It was one of the first times a female actor did a dual role like that on a weekly series. During the run of Bewitched, Elizabeth was nominated for 5 Emmy Awards and 4 Golden Globes. These nominations proved that she was more than just a TV personality. She was a respected actress in the industry. The show itself helped change the way fantasy was used in television. Instead of focusing only on silly or scary magic, Bewitched brought it into everyday life, using it to explore love, family, and personal identity. Next, we'll take a closer look at Elizabeth's roller coaster love life and how it shaped her journey through fame and heartbreak. A complicated romantic life. While Elizabeth Montgomery enjoyed a glowing career in the public eye, her personal life was full of ups and downs. Her relationships were often intense, passionate, and sometimes painful. She was married 3 times, had high-profile romances, and even kept some secrets that only came out years later. Behind the charm and beauty that audiences saw on screen, Elizabeth struggled with love, loyalty, and heartbreak. Her first marriage came in 1954, when she wed Frederick Gallatin Kaman. Fred was a wealthy socialite from New York and came from a well-connected family. The marriage surprised many people, especially because it happened just a few years after Elizabeth's parents divorced. Some believed this quick wedding was a form of rebellion, an emotional reaction to her father, Robert Montgomery's, decision to remarry soon after divorcing Elizabeth's mother. Elizabeth reportedly never forgave him for that, and her marriage to Fred may have been her way of taking control of her own life. Unfortunately, the marriage didn't last. Elizabeth wanted to focus on her acting career, while Fred expected her to take on the role of a traditional wife. The two were mismatched in both lifestyle and expectations. They divorced less than a year after marrying. Her father disapproved of the divorce, adding even more strain to their already difficult relationship. Years later, actor Griffin Dunne shared a surprising story about Elizabeth. As a child, he was babysat by her. He recalled a moment that stood out in his memory, not for a sweet reason, but for a comment that Elizabeth made. According to his memoir, she jokingly compared his baby anatomy to that of her ex-husband, Fred. The remark was meant as humor, but it shocked many when it was revealed years later. It gave the public a glimpse into Elizabeth's bold personality and how she didn't always filter what she said, even in private moments. Her second marriage was to actor Gig Young in 1956. Gig was older and already an established figure in Hollywood. He later won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. For a while, their marriage seemed more stable. They shared a love for acting and supported each other's careers. But like her first marriage, this one didn't last either. They divorced in 1963 after 7 years together. The reasons were kept mostly private, but it's believed that lifestyle differences and emotional distance played a role. Later that same year, Elizabeth married again, this time to William Asher, a successful director and producer. Their relationship was both personal and professional. William became the main director of Bewitched, the series that made Elizabeth a star. The two worked closely on the show and seemed to have a strong bond. They had 3 children together: William, Robert, and Rebecca. Elizabeth was deeply involved in her children's lives, and when she was pregnant with Robert and Rebecca, the Bewitched writers worked those pregnancies into the storyline. Viewers got to see Samantha the Witch go through motherhood, which made the character even more relatable and real. But their marriage, too, started to fall apart over time. The stress of working together, long hours on set, and personal differences began to take a toll. During the 8th and final season of Bewitched, Elizabeth began an affair with Richard Michaels, one of the show's directors. The affair caused major problems, not just in her marriage, but also on the set of the show. William Asher and Elizabeth divorced, and Richard Michaels' own marriage also ended. Because of the scandal, tensions were high and the show's environment became too difficult to manage. ABC wanted Bewitched to continue into a 9th season, but the behind-the-scenes drama made that impossible. The series ended in 1972. Elizabeth and Richard Michaels stayed together for about 2.5 years after the show ended. However, their relationship didn't last either. Eventually, they went their separate ways. In time, Elizabeth found what many believed was her most genuine and lasting relationship with actor Robert Foxworth. They met in the early 1970s while working together and quickly formed a strong bond. Unlike her previous relationships, this one was not surrounded by the pressures of fame or professional conflict. They lived together for almost 20 years before finally getting married in 1993. By then, they had built a quiet, committed life together in Beverly Hills. Elizabeth often said that Robert was the love she had waited for her entire life. Their relationship was steady, supportive, and grounded, something she hadn't experienced in her earlier marriages. Though she found happiness with Foxworth, there were still rumors and whispers. One of the most talked about was her rumored affair with Russian ballet dancer and actor Alexander Godunov. The details of this alleged relationship remain unclear, and it was never confirmed publicly. Some say it was a brief romance, others say it was just a friendship. Either way, it added another layer to the complex love life of Elizabeth Montgomery. Throughout her life, Elizabeth's romantic relationships were closely tied to her personal struggles and desires. Each marriage and breakup reflected something deeper about her search for stability, freedom, and love. Coming up next, we'll look at how fake Hollywood feuds can turn into tabloid myths and why Elizabeth's so-called rivalry with another famous TV star was never what people thought. The feud that never was. For decades, fans and tabloids liked to believe there was a feud between Bewitched star Elizabeth Montgomery and I Dream of Jeannie star Barbara Eden. The idea of the two leading ladies being rivals was fun for the press and made for good gossip, but the truth was far more boring and far more respectful. The rumored tension likely began because of the shows themselves. Bewitched premiered in 1964, and I Dream of Jeannie followed a year later in 1965. Both series featured a magical female lead who tried to live a normal life with a non-magical man. Both had strong followings and ran during the same time period. On top of that, they were filmed at the same studio lot in Hollywood, just a few stages apart. All of this made it easy for people to assume that competition must have existed between the two actresses. As the years went on, fans created stories about backstage drama and jealousy. Some believed Elizabeth Montgomery was upset that Jeannie copied Bewitched's formula. Others claimed Barbara Eden resented Elizabeth for her show being the original hit. But none of that was true. In 2013, Barbara Eden cleared the air during an interview. She made it very clear that there was never any bad blood between her and Elizabeth. In fact, the two got along quite well. Barbara shared that during filming, she and Elizabeth often chatted and had friendly conversations. One thing that brought them even closer was the fact that they were both pregnant around the same time. They connected over motherhood and the shared experience of being working actresses while expecting children. Actress Sally Field also recalled something from those days. She once said that Elizabeth Montgomery got mildly irritated when Barbara Eden would sing on set between scenes. But even Sally explained that it wasn't a serious issue, just a small personal annoyance. There was no real fight or hostility. It was a minor moment, the kind that happens in any workplace. The idea of a feud between Montgomery and Eden was nothing more than a myth. It was built on coincidence, timing, and the media's need to create drama where none existed. Both women were professionals who admired each other and respected their own paths in television history. Up next, we'll dig into how Elizabeth broke out of her magical typecast and the shocking, dark role that helped her do it. A career reinvented. After Bewitched ended in 1972, Elizabeth Montgomery found herself at a crossroads. For 8 seasons, she had been known as Samantha Stevens, the charming suburban witch who tried to live a normal life despite her magical powers. The role had made her a household name, but it also trapped her in a very specific image. To many viewers, she was Samantha, and nothing more. Elizabeth knew that if she wanted to be taken seriously as an actress, she needed to break free from that image. So, she made a conscious choice to take on dramatic, challenging roles that showed a very different side of her talent. One of the most important steps in that transformation was the 1973 TV movie Mrs. Sundance. In it, Elizabeth played Etta Place, the widow of the legendary outlaw Sundance Kid. The film was a fictional continuation of the story from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and it gave Elizabeth a chance to show emotional depth and toughness. Mrs. Sundance wasn't just a turning point in her career, it also changed her personal life. While filming the movie, she met actor Robert Foxworth. The two developed a strong connection on set, and this eventually blossomed into a lifelong relationship. Foxworth would later become Elizabeth's most stable and enduring partner, staying by her side for over 20 years until her death. 2 years after Mrs. Sundance, Elizabeth took on what would become one of the most talked about roles of her career, the legend of Lizzie Borden. In this dark and haunting TV movie, she played Lizzie Borden, the woman accused of brutally murdering her father and stepmother in 1892. The film was gritty, suspenseful, and far removed from the light, magical world of Bewitched. Elizabeth's performance shocked viewers who were used to seeing her as cheerful, gentle Samantha. She gave a chilling, intense portrayal that earned her an Emmy nomination and widespread critical praise. In a strange twist, Elizabeth later learned through a genealogist that she was distantly related to Lizzie Borden. This strange connection only added to the fascination surrounding her performance. Whether or not it influenced her portrayal, the role marked a bold step forward in her career and helped prove once and for all that she was capable of far more than sitcom magic. From that point on, Elizabeth Montgomery became known as the Queen of the TV movies. Between 1972 and 1995, she starred in more than 20 made-for-TV films. These roles allowed her to explore a wide range of characters and stories. She played detectives solving crimes, frontier women facing hardship, nurses with dark secrets, and everyday women dealing with serious personal struggles. No matter the character, Elizabeth always brought emotional honesty and depth to her performances. She wasn't interested in playing it safe. She wanted roles that challenged her and surprised her audience. Next, we'll dive into the complicated relationship Elizabeth had with her famous father and how it shaped her both personally and professionally. The famous father. Elizabeth Montgomery's relationship with her father, Robert Montgomery, was complicated and often tense. While he played a major role in helping her begin her acting career, their personal connection was far from warm or easy. Robert was a well-known actor and television producer, and he had high expectations, both for his work and for his daughter. Elizabeth, on the other hand, was independent and strong-willed. These two sides often clashed, especially as Elizabeth grew older and made choices that went against what her father wanted. The tension between them began after a major event in the family: Robert's divorce from Elizabeth's mother. After ending his long marriage to Elizabeth Bryan Allen, Robert quickly remarried a woman named Elizabeth Buffy Harkness. This decision hurt Elizabeth deeply. She never fully accepted her father's second marriage and reportedly never forgave him for moving on so quickly. The divorce caused a rift in their bond, and that emotional distance lingered for years. Despite these personal struggles, Robert did give Elizabeth an opportunity early in her career. She made her television debut on his show, Robert Montgomery Presents, a respected drama series that featured weekly performances by well-known and rising stars. Some people assumed Elizabeth was handed the role simply because she was Robert's daughter, but that wasn't the case. She had to audition alongside several other young actresses and won the part based on her talent. Even so, Elizabeth was nervous leading up to her first appearance. She wanted to prove herself, not just to the audience, but also to her father. On the day of the broadcast, Robert called her into his dressing room for a quiet talk. He tried to calm her nerves and offer reassurance, though Elizabeth later admitted that she had been shaking with fear. When the cameras finally rolled, she focused completely and gave a solid performance. It was a major moment for her. That role marked the beginning of her television career and led to many more acting opportunities. Although she was grateful for the chance, the emotional strain between her and her father never fully went away. Her growing success in Hollywood didn't heal their relationship. In fact, some of her life decisions seemed to push them even further apart. Elizabeth's first marriage to Frederick Gallatin Kaman is often viewed as a direct challenge to her father's influence. Robert didn't approve of the match, and when the marriage ended quickly, he was upset by the divorce. Kaman came from a wealthy and socially elite family, which Robert admired. Elizabeth, however, chose to end the marriage so she could focus on her career, something Robert saw as reckless. Her refusal to live by his expectations only widened the gap between them. Throughout her life, Elizabeth made it clear that she wanted to be her own person, both in her career and in her relationships. Her independence and drive came with personal costs, but they also defined her strength and determination. Up next, we'll look at how Elizabeth used her fame not just for acting, but to speak up for causes she believed in. Illness and final days. In the early months of 1995, Elizabeth Montgomery was working on what would be her final acting project, the TV movie Deadline for Murder, from the files of Edna Buchanan. During filming, she began to feel unusually tired and unwell. At first, she believed it was just the flu. She brushed it off, continued working, and didn't think much of it. But the symptoms didn't go away. She started losing weight, felt persistent pain, and struggled with energy. Something wasn't right. Eventually, Elizabeth went to the doctor. What she thought was a lingering virus turned out to be much more serious. She was diagnosed with a colon cancer. Tragically, by the time doctors found it, the cancer had already spread to her liver. The disease was in an advanced stage, and treatment options were limited. The news came as a shock to Elizabeth and her family. Even in the face of such a grim diagnosis, Elizabeth remained strong-willed and private. She didn't want a public hospital death or media attention. Instead, she made the personal decision to stay at home in Beverly Hills, surrounded by the people who mattered most to her. Her longtime partner, Robert Foxworth, remained by her side every moment, offering quiet strength and care. Her 3 children, William, Robert, and Rebecca, were also there to comfort and support her during her final days. Elizabeth passed away peacefully at home on May 18, 1995. She was only 62 years old. Her death shocked fans around the world, many of whom had no idea she had been sick. The news spread quickly, and tributes poured in from all corners of the entertainment world. Elizabeth was cremated privately as she had requested. 1 month later, on June 18th, a public memorial service was held at the Cannon Theater in Beverly Hills. It was a beautiful and emotional event, attended by many of her friends, colleagues, and family members. Musician Herbie Hancock performed in her honor, as did singer-songwriter Amanda McBroom. Writer and close friend Dominic Dunn gave a touching speech. Robert Foxworth stood before the crowd and read several letters sent by loved ones, including notes from Elizabeth's children and her brother, Robert Jr. Their words gave a personal glimpse into her warmth, her humor, and the deep love they all felt for her. After her death, Elizabeth's beloved home in Paterson, New York, where she had spent much of her time away from Hollywood, was sold. The property eventually became part of Wonder Lake State Park. In this way, the peaceful landscape she had loved became a public place others could enjoy for generations. Elizabeth Montgomery's final months were quiet, personal, and full of love. She left this world as she had lived, on her own terms, surrounded by family and dignity. Her widow speaks at last. For nearly 30 years after Elizabeth Montgomery's death, her longtime partner, Robert Foxworth, stayed quiet about many of the more private parts of their life together. He had always been respectful of her boundaries and deeply protective of her memory. But in a 2025 interview, given on what would have been Elizabeth's 92nd birthday, Foxworth finally opened up about a story that had been quietly whispered for decades. The rumor that Elizabeth Montgomery had a secret child before she became famous. In the interview, Foxworth confirmed that the story was true. Long before Bewitched, before her rise to stardom, Elizabeth had given birth to a child. It happened during the early 1950s, at a time when she was just starting to build her acting career. She was unmarried, and her parents, especially her father, Robert Montgomery, were highly concerned with public image. The pressures of Hollywood, family expectations, and the social norms of the time all made the situation incredibly difficult. Elizabeth was faced with a painful decision. Fearing that the pregnancy would derail her career and damage her reputation, she made the heartbreaking choice to place the baby for adoption. The child was never spoken about publicly, and only a handful of people ever knew the truth. Even within her close circle, the topic was avoided. Foxworth said that Elizabeth carried deep guilt and sadness about this decision for the rest of her life. It was something that weighed on her heavily, even during her happiest years. He explained that she wasn't ashamed of the child. She was ashamed of the world that forced her into silence and secrecy. She never spoke about it publicly because she feared the story would be twisted into gossip and that people would reduce her legacy to a single moment of private pain. The interview came only after new records and personal letters began to surface in early 2025. These included handwritten notes from Elizabeth, correspondence between her and a close friend, and confirmation from all three of her children, William, Robert, and Rebecca, that the story was true. They had learned about their mother's secret years ago but chose to keep it private out of love and respect. In the interview, Foxworth stressed that his decision to speak was not for attention or scandal. He said he felt it was finally time to tell the truth, not to damage Elizabeth's memory, but to give a fuller picture of who she really was. She wasn't just Samantha Stevens or the queen of TV movies. She was also a deeply human woman who made hard choices, lived with grief, and loved her children fiercely. Foxworth also shared touching details about how Elizabeth prepared her family for her death. In the final months of her life, she wrote private letters to each of her children. In them, she expressed her love, shared personal thoughts, and left behind memories that helped bring emotional healing to the family. One letter, according to Foxworth, directly addressed the child she had given up. It was never meant to be public. It was just her way of saying goodbye and possibly offering peace. The days leading up to Elizabeth's death were filled with difficult conversations, but also reconciliation. Her children, including the one who had been placed for adoption and later found her as an adult, were able to come together. According to Foxworth, the final days were painful but also healing. The family finally had honest closure, and Elizabeth was surrounded by love. This new revelation adds a deeper, more personal layer to how we remember Elizabeth Montgomery, not just as a talented actress, but as a complex, private, and deeply human woman who lived through joy and pain alike. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss more stories about the stars who shaped Hollywood history.